So you've downloaded several Mixamo animations, and naturally, that's actually a skill that will come on very handy in the later exercises of this course. Little note though, which is right around chapter 6, 7, 8 and on, where you'll start constructing your own exercise scenes. Or go through it now. And if you'll feel a little lost later in the course, just return here to refresh your memory. First, let's take this run crouched animation. The reason I decided to do so is that now, hit Ctrl+V to paste it several times. Yep, the whole thing loops. Compared to if I'd done it without having the in-place checker on the character would go to the end of the cycle and then return. Which is something that I could fix later, of course. But why make my life more complicated than it is? Now what happened is this character makes those several run cycles and then it starts off from the original point and finish the run to crouch animation. But we'll animate that in a moment. Let's finish combining the animations by adding the fire rifle animation at the end. Now the key to solving both these issues. The static part of the run cycle and the jump here is to play with the location of the root bone of this character, meaning the one that controls the position of the armature. But you can always figure it out by going to the pose mode with Ctrl tab and then here in the outliner unfolding this pose drop down menu. The very first bone you find here is the one controlling where your character is placed. And in case of Mixamo characters, it's this hip bone here. The FVX armature actually comes in with all these scale parameters keyframed. Just adds more clutter here in the graph editor. I type in scale that filters out just the scale keyframes. Expand this left menu to see the name of our keyframes. And also let's hit this normalize option, which changes the display of the animation curves so that they all fit into the window ranging from bottom to the top. And hit Shift H to hide everything else but this channel. Based on the coordinates of the hip bone, it moves in space in the Z-axis, it reaches this last point of the animation, as indicated by this sudden change in the curve, and push them all the way up here, until the curve is nice and smooth. And that immediately solved the biggest issue with the jump. And now just to be sure, but this one seems to be mostly fine. And that's it. That single quotes as how you fix these jumping issues when stringing similar animation types from Mixamo together in Graph Editor.
You cannot expect to just string together.
That would require a lot of manual animation work to fix.
However, when it comes to these modular animations, they can be put together easily as long as the poses are close enough.
The way I like to animate this in Graph Editor is to delete all the frames, just leaving the first one. Then I push it down until it's kinda in the same angle as the rest of the animation.
It doesn't need to be totally perfect to work. That's how I went about stringing together all of these various animations.
I do this a lot, because really, there's a lot of possibilities there, just waiting for you to put together into animated scenes. A bit of idle animation, and finally crouching. I imported the character with just a T-pose animation, keyframe in. All of the bones with the I shortcut. And right off the bat, you can also delete the scale parameters, we will not need them.
Once I've done it several times, I was able to cycle the animation until I decided that at this point, there is this visible jerk in the animation that we want to somehow solve. Let's just smooth out the curve like we did in the previous case. And now let's address the jump I in the animation up here. And there is this super handy keyboard shortcut for that. I usually just take several frames before and after there is the jump in the animation. I copy-pasted all of the keyframes to basically repeat the whole sequence. And I also got rid of the jump at the end here to be able to transition into the run to stop animation. But there was another complication that you may encounter with these Mixamo animations. While this character is apparently holding a rifle, this one is holding a pistol. I unfortunately didn't find any pistol RUN.TO stop animation at Mixamo, so I have to repropose this rifle animation. It retains the same position as from the pistol movement, but the legs are moving according to the RUN.TO stop with a rifle. You can see me here pinpointing the area where a jump in animation happens. One thing I don't really like about this result is how much leaned back the character is at this point. We can, however, adjust it by adjusting the curves in the graph editor. So what I've done here is I selected this bone and the spine of the character. If you have the local orientation axis activated up here, you'll be able to see that the axis I want to edit is, of course, the red or X1. And that's the one I isolated with the Shift-H keyboard shortcut. Now, if you activate the proportional editing option, you will be able to select just one keyframe and move it up in space. It's this slowing down part of the animation. I was able to edit the whole angle of the body at that point. It was time to paste the crouch animation. I copied just the keyframes from the stand to crouch clip and I pasted it right behind this animation over here. So instead of trying to smooth out these two idle animations here, I just cut off these few keyframes after the jump has happened, but the character doesn't go to the crouch yet. And with that, I've achieved a much better result than if I was trying to smooth out those two idle animations. Getting rid of this stationary animation here, which I again achieved by playing with the Z location curve, and moving it down like this to achieve the forward movement. All this we already talked about a little while earlier, which you may or may not use in the future exercises of this course. However, if you do not feel like mixing your own animations, you can always use anything that I provide in this course. And there's plenty of it, especially in Chapter 11, so check it out afterwards.